Cardahan?
A lot of questions. First of all, you know, the $64,000 question. What did the Navy charge you for the land?
Well, they haven't charged us anything because we haven't agreed. Suffice it to say that we are
In negotiations?
We're in negotiations, and what we believe the land is worth is considerably less than what they believe it's worth and would like to get.
Can you share?
I don't know if that sounds familiar.
Yes, well, very much so. How much are you talking about?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to say what the Navy thinks it's worth, but I can tell you that it's a factor of 25. They think it's worth 25 times more than we think it's worth.
Is that a showstopper?
Yes. Okay. We cannot compensate the Navy at that level and implement this project. This project doesn't have the ability to.
So you probably agree with us that it should be a no-cost conveyance then, right?
Well, you know, that's sort of an ideal scenario. I'm sure you're aware that there's been legislation introduced in the U.S. Senate that would implement that. I think we're not averse to compensating the Navy for the property as long as we can do it in a way that's fair and supports our project.
You had major problems with the seawall and the floodplain, and I didn't see any of your data here because this was a very short, precise presentation. And thank you very much. Really, very, very, very nice to see it moving on. How much did you have to raise, or how much other effort you had to put in to build a seawall or reinforce the existing?
So the engineering analysis that we've done contemplates basically raising the level of all of the first floor elevations of all the buildings 3 feet above, to accommodate 3 feet of sea level rise. Our approach has been not to build a wall around it, but to actually raise the elevations to what we think is a reasonable accommodation of sea level rise. We'll know in 15, 20 years whether that's adequate. We have a financing mechanism that enables us to, if we need to, we can actually raise the seawall to above that level to protect for greater accommodation than that. But
would the whole island be under the floodplain then?
No. Today, the average height on the island is about 10 feet above sea level. It's actually higher than many places in the rest of San Francisco. So if it rises above that, we have bigger issues than Treasure Island.
But the seawall itself had to be reinforced too. I thought you had to put a lot of.
It does. It needs to be reinforced in the case of a seismic event. If an earthquake was to happen today of sufficient magnitude, basically the seawall would just slide. And so we need to reinforce it so that in the case there is an earthquake, it holds steady.
Hey, you have a relatively aggressive 30% set aside for homeless. But I noticed in there that included the existing homeless in your count?
Yeah, and just to be clear, the overall below market rate housing program is 30% of all of the units. The actual homeless component it's about 6 or 7% of the total housing program. It's probably 25% of the total affordable housing program.
But the existing that you already have on site will be counted as part of your overall.
Correct. The units that they're currently occupying will be demolished and will be replaced with new units, but their program will actually expand.
Part of your count then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. I reserve some.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Vice Mayor DeHaan mentioned that you're moving on with the project. I just want to be clear. It's my understanding that you're in about the same place as Alameda is. You don't have a deal with the Navy yet, and that needs to be done before you can proceed with your plans.
Correct. In fact, I think there's some trepidation on the part of our private partners of continuing to spend large amounts of money without knowing that that the city has access to the land. Yeah. We are I think you guys were a little bit ahead of us with a term sheet with the Navy, and
We trade places a bit, but yeah, we're pretty neck and neck, I think, at this point.
Which unfortunately isn't quite moving on, but it's...
If you want to stick around, you can hear a little bit more, but the developer that you have in place, that was Lennar?
it's so the LLC is called Treasure Island Community Development. They are 50% a partnership of Wilson Meany Sullivan, which is a commercial developer, mixed use. They're the folks that did the renovation of the ferry building, and Kenwood Investments, which is a San Francisco firm. The other 50% is Lennar. So it's half public company, public money, half private developer, private investment money.
And in today's marketplace, are you having the same kind of concerns we have with funding?
You know, as frustrating and as long as these processes can be, to some degree now is the time to be in a planning process. If we actually had an approved project and they were out trying to obtain financing to build infrastructure, we would be hurting if the economy and the financing world hasn't changed for the better in 2 years, when we hope to be actually out having dirt turns. We're going to be in a similar situation. But right now, they're willing to spend the money on the planning process, which is obviously much smaller dollars.
Of the $1.2 billion for infrastructure, basically how much of that's going to be bonded by the city?
We've estimated that about $700 million of the $1.2 billion is we refer to as project-generated tax-exempt financing. So that's a combination of tax increment and Mello-Roos. So it's public financing, but it wouldn't exist but for the project. And then the $500 million balance is the private developer's responsibility. As I suspect it may be the case here, because of the way timing of public financing works and it requiring actually having increases in tax value, the private investors, the private equity goes in at the very beginning, and our estimates are that it's the first $250 million in expenses are almost entirely in the private sector before you even start accessing the public financing.